I have a question for you, John. An important issue, especially in Johnston County, that we haven't heard about lately is increasing infrastructure, particularly on I-95. As you all know, the contention was turning it into a toll road, but I'd like to offer a tentative solution for funding, and that is the state of North Carolina is on the cusp of having a vibrant petroleum industry if natural gas production fulfills the potential possibly has. I was just inviting you to consider that as a possible revenue source for increasing infrastructure. It's obvious that something's going to have to be done. It's also obvious that the money's got to come from somewhere, and I think we can turn to a key part of that. Just want to offer that for your consideration.
Well, I appreciate your comments very much. I've been very opposed to the toll of I-95, and I want to be real clear about what my position is on that. There's no doubt that I-95 needs significant upgrades. My view is that other parts of the state, when it was their turn, have had their significant upgrades without it being resorting to tolls. I don't have a problem with tolls for new lanes, the tolls being on the new lanes. I don't have a problem with tolls for a new highway. I mean, I don't like them, but I can live with that. But I don't think it's right or fair in eastern North Carolina. It's a regional issue to slam our economy by placing tolls up and down I-95 on the, in my view, mistaken belief that the only people who ride it are people going to Florida or coming back from Florida. We have trucking interest, we have shipping interest all over eastern North Carolina that use the I-95 corridor. You know, I'm quite certain there are lots of Caterpillar, without going and asking, lots of Caterpillar equipment that's shipped up and down I-95. And if you add that kind of cost, are they going to want to stay in Clayton? If you know, we build tires at Bridgestone, Firestone, and Wilson, and I'm certain they ship quite a few of them up and down I-95. You know, it's pretty easy to pack that plane up and move it to South Carolina, where they don't have tolls. So I feel very strongly about that. And we have to find a solution. There needs to be an upgrade. We maybe don't need to upgrade it the way the DOT had planned to do it. Maybe we don't have to have the Cadillac right now. We can you know, build out the things that we really need and find the money to do that. But we have to find an alternate solution. I appreciate your comments on energy. That's a subject that's very dear to my heart. I took a legislative trip recently in October to Texas to view their efforts down there. Had a meeting with the governor on Wednesday with some folks to talk about the subject, and I'm very encouraged. North Carolina has a lot of potential there, and when we look at the facts and not the hysteria, the benefits and the potential there are just tremendous. And I'll just give you I think this will make a point for those who might be skeptical. Texas has an $8 billion rainy day fund. $8 billion rainy day fund. Now, I don't expect us to ever have that from shale gas here in North Carolina or even offshore, but it would provide significant revenues and just the economic growth and jobs. There are each well, there are studies that show that each well that is successfully drilled and producing generates 13 to 14 permanent jobs, and many other part-time jobs that fill in around that. So I'm very enthusiastic about that future. We don't really know what we've got here until it is explored and the potential for development is fully looked at by the industry. But we've made a lot of efforts in the last session, and we'll be making more to make North Carolina make it clear to the industry that North Carolina is open for business in that regard. And we're going to have the best regulations. We've got a great opportunity to draw everything from scratch and take the best methods, the best regulations, the best processes that have been developed for horizontal drilling and hydraulic fracturing for the last 30, 40 years. I mean, they've had many thousands of wells that have been dug or drilled successfully across North America. And there's no reason why we need to be sitting on the sidelines. And that may be the answer to the I-95. I appreciate your comments.
The bottleneck for I-95 that I've learned recently is basically from exit 81 south to about 21, I believe it is. Basically from St. Paul's to Benson is where the bottleneck is. And the majority of that bottleneck is actually from Highway 421 back to St. Paul's. And the problem there was, years ago when it was created, they didn't get enough right-of-way to do anything other than just put in 4 lanes. If you'll notice, as you're going through there, the median is very small, and so there's no access there to put in an extra lane. There is talk of doing extra lanes and just towing those, and I would not be opposed to that. I'm still of this opinion. If they're going to tow 95, they need to tow 77, 85, 26, and all of them at the same time, same day.
Same rate.
And absolutely the same rate. But Buck hit on a key that I had found out when the North Carolina Department of Transportation originally designed the new 95. It was the Rolls Royce edition. So there is talk now of coming in with more like a Chevy or a Ford edition and seeing if we can't make it work. There's a couple of bridges that's got to be raised. There's been some research done on actually just building another bridge over that bridge and then tearing the lower one down. And then you've still got your pretty much infrastructure there, which would save millions of dollars. So those are some things. It's something I don't think you'll see tolls on 95 anytime in the near future. But we have a major shortfall of infrastructure limited in this state. So we've got to figure out something to do with it. And so I think everybody that is pertaining or working on any type of roads or bridges or infrastructure in this state is certainly thinking outside the box. And so we appreciate your question, and we know that is a major concern, not to just toll 95.
Excuse me. I am opposed to total 95. The reason is because it's so important to Eastern North Carolina. You know, it's one thing just to think about the traffic on it, and that it's basically passing through our state. But as Buck mentioned, the business part of it and all the traffic it is extremely important to Eastern North Carolina. And since tobacco went out, we've suffered enough. We don't need to add to that. We need to actually try to do something that helps Eastern North Carolina. Total 95 is not in. And, you know, as Ben Samantha said, one of the things is North Carolina sends more money to Washington than we get back on the roads too. So it's we've got a lot of biases that I think affects how much money we have available to do that.
Questions? Would you like to go?
It was mentioned about half of our budget is used on education. So what can we do there? What's being looked at to be able to free up some funds for other needs?
I'll start, be happy to. I think a good step in the right direction is the current Senate Bill 795, which is, to me, from what I've read of it, a first step toward correcting some of the problem. I personally don't believe that money alone educates anybody. I go back to one of the comments made over here. Everything starts at home and in the community. Children have to go to school predisposed to learn. That's step one. But we can do a lot of things to improve the system. I believe in the Senate bill that I referenced, the teacher tenure issue comes up. We want good teachers, not teachers who have been around a long time. Subsidizing mediocrity leads you to mediocrity, and you don't want to go in that direction. We want our schools to go back to producing the best and the brightest. Teachers have to be qualified, and they have to stay qualified, like as in any other endeavor that you go into. Funds certainly have to be there for that. But does every school have to be a Cadillac school? I think all of us in this room learned a lot with an overhead projector and slab slides if you have to go to that. It's nice to have the technology, but I don't want a teacher who's primarily a technology person that can do all of that stuff but not teach my kids. I just don't want that to be part of the equation. There are any number of things that we can do. I believe that competition made our country what it is. Why in the heck can't we have competition in our schools? The only way to have a school is not to have a public school. Don't focus on these things. Focus on what the objective is, and that's educate the kids. If it ends up being a charter school is better, so be it. If it ends up being homeschooling, which I'm familiar with because Mona's and mine's daughter homeschooled, so be it. If it ends up being private contracts and outsourcing, so be it, but get the education standard up. And then enforce the standard as well. I don't know what the full answer is, but we have a panoply of ways to go about this. Going down the road of a single solution never really arrives at the best solution.
I think maybe if we just go down the line, I think everybody probably wants to comment on this. I have 3 children in traditional public school. My 2 boys from middle schools. A little bit while I was late, I was having to be dad for a minute before I walked out the door to make sure that they were ready to go to school tomorrow. My view is that school choice is really the main thing that's going to make a difference in our educational system. There are charter schools in the state, for example, that are doing an excellent job. And they do that for about 60 cents on the dollar of a traditional public school. I choose not to send my children to the charter school in Wilson County. But that's because I have choice. And for me, the choice in my children is better to send them to the traditional public school where they're going now. They may not finish there, may decide next year that they need to be somewhere else, but I want that choice. And I'm glad that I have that choice. Because I think competition does matter. It's a different environment than business competition, but it's still competition and it's healthy. As long as our families and these kids have a choice, kids should not be trapped in a failing public school. And that was the purpose of 795 that Senator Berg wanted to push, our leader of the Senate wanted to push. We need to do more. Johnston County is a great example of a system that is doing excellent work with the budgets that they have available to them. I mean, they've had tremendous growth and tremendous school construction. I heard you, Commissioner. And I'm still here. You know, it's one of the best school systems in the country and in the state. Management matters. Management matters on the local level, and it matters in all levels. And I'll give you an example. Pick on my home. I'm in Johnston County. Pick on my home county. Senator Rabin talked about technology. Technology is a wonderful thing. I'm sitting here with an iPad. I love it. I think it's great. But my boys are in middle school, and our school system has decided that they just had to put an iPad in everybody's hand. Now, they did this without any preparation. They did this without training any teachers. It took teachers out of school for almost 2 weeks. So my kids had substitutes for 2 weeks while the teachers in the middle of the school year went off to go get iPad training. Okay? So there's no forethought there how to roll this out. Now, if you're going to do it, you ought to do it right. I mean, they shouldn't be doing this to check a box and say, oh, we've given everybody iPads, isn't that great? What difference does that make? Overhead projectors work just fine if that's how the teacher knows how to effectively teach the children. But if they don't, and all the kids are going to do, which is what's going on, I'm on a soapbox for a minute. That's what's going on with my boys, is they sit back, and when they get bored, they sit there and play games on their iPad. Because there's no control over what's going on with the iPad. Now, to answer your question, I think the choice is there, but we have to have local accountability. I think Johnston County has done a good job of that with their school board. I wish it was the same in every county. But we have got to take a full, broad approach to how we continue to push education. We have great opportunities with technology, with the opportunities with virtual charters, with online education. With the technology that we have now and the internet access that's available in most areas of the state, tremendous teaching can go on. You can get upper level math and science classes from, there's no reason why you can't get instruction from some of the best teachers around the state. Not just in Johnston County, not just in Wilson County, but from around the state. I just learned that we have an online system that DPI operates, but it's just for a few people. And nobody really knows how to get onto it.
What incentives are there for the counties to come under budget? You know, to,
Well, I think that's an excellent question, but I think part of the incentives have to be local control and local accountability. It's hard to have a blanket approach to saying this for every county, but the county commissioners provide a lot of money to the schools, and they don't get to direct the schools exactly how to spend it. And the state provides a lot of money to the schools, and we typically provide it in very broad ways. Spend the money this way, spend the money that way. So it's still that local school board that really breaks down how it's going to be done. So to answer your question, we can do a lot on the state level by forcing the systemic changes, by creating choices, by trying to broaden charter schools and other opportunities. But a lot of this is a local control issue. And I've talked too much on this already, so I'm passing.
Moderator, you never start moderating. I'm gonna let he's the education expert on this side of the table. I've got my opinions, but I'll keep them to myself.
Well, I probably should too. No, I think there's opportunities to improve all education. And I hope that one of the things we're, in trying to come up with new plans is that we're actually going to look at all those things and come up with a systematic system to do what we need to do and provide the opportunities we need to provide the children. One of the things we do, though, is, and Bud's example of computers is a good thing. It's a good example of how it happens sometimes. And you can't make change or create the change that you want and end up with a product that you want if you don't do the necessary stuff going into it. It just won't happen. It'll be another program like about 5 I can name that during my teaching career that came forth that was supposed to make everything better. That didn't, because it was always not finished. And that is the whole key, is have to put in place a plan that addresses the concerns we have and try to actually meet all of that and provide the resources necessary for that to happen. And I think competition is not a problem. Public schools are going to be in North Carolina, are going to be the major training of our young people. And that's not going to change. So we need to make sure our public schools are doing the things they need to do. And hopefully, you've got a wide spectrum of what's being done in this state, all over, from cities to towns, counties. Johnston County's done a great job. And why did we do that? Because we put together a good plan. We knew where we wanted to go and did a good plan together. And that is, we're a good example for a system that works. And hopefully that people can learn from that. I definitely did. And I was lucky enough to be chairman of the county commissioners when we put that plan in place. So, and it was to do it without raising taxes, by the way, which has happened. And that is prioritizing how we spend money. So the state can do the same thing.
We have about 15.
I want to just say a few words on it. I can't let Buck have all the time. I want to tell you a true life example. Duplin County and Johnston County has a great school system. Sampson County has a great school system. And Duplin County has a great school system, but they're all three different. And the difference is Duplin is certainly a low wealth county with limited resources and tax base and tax revenue. Sampson's a little better than Duplin, but nowhere near as good as Johnston. I mean, let's just put the cards out on the table. But what they've done in Duplin is something that I have advocated for years, even when I was on the community college board of trustees back in the early 90s, is we have gotten away from vocational training. Everybody does not need to go get a 4-year degree. I fully believe that, and I could be wrong, but that's just my opinion. And I will commend Duplin County because they're running the pilot program started last year, and it's working out to their success. They are taking these kids in the 8th grade, but here's the key to it, and they're sort of directing them how they need to move to either decide if they want to go to a higher education learning of a university or that type of thing, or if they want to go to a community college, or if they want to go straight out of high school into the workforce. But here's what they're doing that has been different that I've seen in a lot of places where we've done this. The parents are mandated to attend this in order for their children to be in this program. They have to be involved. And that's where we've sort of lost the boat. We can blame it on the politicians, and we, as politicians, have certainly done our fault. Hopefully it's all before we got here. That's what I like to think anyhow. But we've sort of left it to the teachers, and it's a home issue. I mean, it gets back to the family in the home. And we're living at different times now, but what Duplin has done is they start them in the 8th grade, so they're training them little by little, so that when they get to the 10th grade, they've pretty much committed, not in stone, but they have committed that they're either going to go to the community college, or going to go straight into the workforce, or either they're going on to a 4-year degree. The other thing they have done, not only involving the parents, but they're involving local businesses with economic development initiatives tied to it. So that is I've been watching that program with great enthusiasm, and I certainly hope and want to see it be a success, and I think that's something we need to sort of be looking at as we think outside the box. It's time to think outside the box because coming from the private sector, we think outside the box pretty much all the time if we want to survive, and that's what we've got to do in state government. I'll leave it at that on education.
We have about 10 minutes. I'm going to start here and then you as well.
That's it.
Okay, perfect. Yes, sir.
Two things. One of the problems with technology, I'm a teacher, teaching in Harnett County now, I'm also taught in Lee County. 1/5 of teacher evaluations is based on technology use in classroom. So there's a huge push for it, whether you're in a school that has the ability, capabilities for it or not. The whole new teacher evaluation focuses on everything except for educating the children. I currently teach 5th grade, and one of the questions that I have is in the North Carolina education system, we're pushing kids through school whether or not they get an education.
Thank you.
I get about 25 to 30% of my students each year that pass the end of grade test for the 4th grade. That's a problem. When only 25 to 30% of my students are at level for the grade material that I'm teaching. I'm in 5th grade, I have students that read on a end of kindergarten level. I have students that can't tell me what number comes after the number 8. But I'm required, and I'm evaluated on whether or not they pass a test on multiplying fractions. I'm getting students that are nowhere near, and what winds up happening, has happened for so long in the public education system is we set these standards. Here's the end of grade test that they have to pass. But if they don't pass it, we have a waiver system just to get them on through. And this year, my understanding of the new law is that in 3rd grade, if they don't pass the reading test, we're going to hold them back. We also need something in place for math. And then, is there anything in plan for next year when that happens if you don't have a 4th grade in the state? Because almost all of the 3rd graders don't have.
That's interesting.
You might have noticed that as I passed the baton, it went this way, that I started writing a little bit. I'm sure that some of the folks that know me will say, because what I left out of the key ingredients, the way I believe we should go, and the way I think that we will go, is standards. Standards for the student. If you create a system of of education, I don't care how good the blocks hold together and the arrows point in the right direction, if you don't have an expectation and a standard that you're willing to enforce, and in this day and age, I find that getting more and more and more difficult. The only objective should relate to the children, or to the kid, K through 12. I went through, when I started getting awakened to this problem in this state, I went through and looked at, I think it might have been I'm pretty sure it was the education folks. There was no objective. They had a mission to teach kids. What's the objective when you're doing that? If you don't have these things explicit, that's where it comes where you have to have a vision that goes all the way through and doesn't just say it's up to the local community. Here is the objective we expect. The functions of management are plan, organize, direct, control, and coordinate. If you lose the control aspect, the outcome gets unpredictable. We want it predictable that the children learn. That's the standard the teacher should be held to. And it has to be if we go into the competitive nature of the competitive arena that we talk about, we have to be sure that the standards are maintained also. You can't have homeschool kids with one standard, public school kids with another, and charter schools with another. Someone has to decide what those are. Who the best team is to serve. I know that I'd like to have, I know some business folks who would like to have input because they're tired of teaching the people who come directly into the workforce how to read a ruler. They can't do it. Those simple tasks that we learned just like falling downstairs, it was so easy, are things that have been left out as we push to get people through the system and out of the way, as opposed to they can do something when they get out.
Yes, sir.
I want to add something to what he said. He was talking about promoting students that aren't meeting the objectives. I actually was a parent of my child. I'm on the exact other end of that. In 4th grade, my child had straight A's and B's, but she didn't pass the end of grade test, and they were going to hold her back because she didn't pass the test. The test is unfair to the students. It's unfair to the teachers because you're holding the teachers accountable for how many kids pass the test. Why don't we let teachers teach and say, okay, when they leave 5th grade, this is what they're expected to know. When I went to school, we had a final exam, and it was a 5th of our grade. We had 4 grades and a final exam. What's wrong with that?
I'll answer. I don't think there's anything wrong with that at all. EOGs, as I understand it, was a creature from the No Child Left Behind federal legislation. What a lot of people don't realize, though, is that it's actually illegal to base the promotion or the denial of promotion of a child based on the EOG scores alone. And a lot of school systems have adopted that measurement as a way of deciding whether or not a child should be promoted or not. I've seen that quite a bit in Wilson County as well. I don't think that's how it should be done. I think there ought to be flexibility of the school system to do that. I do think that the reading standard is important enough that we do need to draw that line and support that legislation. We did provide, and hopefully as this gets implemented, we will have good remedial systems for intensive summer reading programs as well as programs through the next year if they're still not able to pass a reading. Because you can't do that advanced math if you can't read the directions. And so I just think it's crucial that we draw that standard there. I really do think we have to draw a line there. But there are exceptions within the bill that they can make exceptions even then for students who don't pass it. Your point's well taken though about math. There's no doubt about it. We have a long way to go.
With what this gentleman was talking about there, one of the problems is that to pass a child on when they fail the EOG, all you have to really do is have the principal sign off that says this student does well all year long and that they just have trouble with the test that they failed the EOG. And unfortunately what you wind up when teachers are graded and evaluated based on those EOG scores and how many pass and how many students get promoted to the next grade level, you'll have teachers that will pull whole sets of grades and say, well, nobody in the class did well on this, so I'm not gonna put it in the grade book. Well, that means the students didn't learn that information. But all the time, you'll see students that, I get students in that when I look at their record from the year before, they're straight A students, and they can't do basic addition or subtraction.
Let me say this, I know we're running short of time, so maybe it's another topic we need to cover. I wanted you to know what my view is on teacher evaluations. You know, I think teachers should be evaluated based upon how they take the kids as they get them and where they carry the kids to, okay? I mean, if you've got top students and you barely move the needle with them, you know, they're all going to do great on their EOGs, they're all going to make straight A's, they're all going to be AIG type kids and do well on whatever standardized test you give them. But if you haven't moved the needle, I don't think you've necessarily been a very effective teacher. But if you take kids that are way behind grade level and you get them to grade level, you've done a heck of a job. And that's the way, I don't know that we have yet the measurements in place in order to put that, but I don't think I'm alone in that view. I think there are quite a few folks that think that's the way a teacher ought to be measured. And I think part of that's tests, part of that's peer evaluations. Personally, I think that parents ought to be asked. I don't know how heavily it should be weighted, but I think it should be asked. Parents know who good teachers, if they care and they're paying attention to their kids, they know who are good teachers and who are bad teachers. We've all had that. Everybody's been through that system. We all know. So I'll stop there.
Yes, ma'am. I'm gonna let someone ask me.
Well, I'm going to change gears for just a second. I want to say thank you. On behalf of Johnston Community College, I want to thank the legislature for all the support you've shown to the Johnston Community College system. In the 58 colleges across the state, as you know, we're one of the best systems in the country. And we're very proud of that, so we appreciate that. We're doing a lot of retraining right now. We're doing a lot of helping to get folks back into the workforce, from plant closings to agricultural changes to all kinds of things. We've been fortunate to be able to use North Carolina Tobacco Trust Fund dollars to do that. We've had great success with a lot of different folks doing a lot of different things in this state. As I've seen that money work for years now, and I really, really appreciate that. So I just want to say that. Also, the Small Business Center Network, which is what I do. I appreciate the support you've given to the community colleges for that as well. And I'll have to say thank you to the county as well. So thank you very much.
Yes, sir. Just quick.
Quick question. The uranium mine, Virginia, has the state taken any stand on that?
It has been brought to our attention, and I'm sure we will take a stance. I think they're trying to work it out where we really don't at this point in time, but there is discussion going on with the folks in Virginia about this now, that we do not want them to start, pulling the uranium out because we're going to be downstream on it. So that has been mentioned on several occasions in the last several weeks.
And the reason why I asked that is, in fact, I was on a committee in New York State to help close nuclear fuels plant in 68. They're still trying to clean that up. And everyone around that plant, 1 out of 2 people have cancer, and it's uranium. Once you open it up, you open Pandora's box. It's different than natural gas.
Well, for those that don't know what he's talking about, and somebody might can explain a little bit better than I can, but there's uranium deposits in northern Virginia that it will actually, if they go to playing with them, will flow into North Carolina through the streams and Carl Lake, I believe it is.
Ronald Valley.
Is that it, Ronald Valley?
Yes.
So this is a major concern for North Carolina, and so there is major opposition to this from the governor's level, the previous governor and the current governor, all the way up to the ladder. So it is, we're strongly urging them not to do this.
I've heard a lot about it in the last 6 months or so, especially coming from the northeast. And exactly what Brent said, that the Roanoke River Valley like that, when you're talking Carl Lake, Gaston, and all the way down to the coast and the Hacks Head and the Mexico Sound. So, I mean, if it were to be a spill or leakage or contamination, I mean, you're talking about the majority of coastal North Carolina being affected. So it's a serious concern. It's on our radar, but I don't think we've, other than we got a new government, then it's it's all on everybody's list. I don't know where we are other than that.
I want to thank everybody for coming out. I'm gonna let everyone say the last few words to close it up. Please look in your local newspapers for more of these. I know Senator Jackson has one tomorrow night at the Tobacco Museum and then one on Thursday night at the Sampson Community College. But I'm gonna let you guys finish it up. Thank you guys for making this possible.
And just on that, well, we should have the same panel tomorrow night, so, but I will have Buck on the gag order. Y'all gotta know, I pick it back all the time. I suck it, so I'm good, you know, if I don't make my day, and if I'm pick at it, so, you know, we'll start with Senator Rabin.
Well, on the gag order issue, Brent, yeah, you probably heard me say one day, and you heard me say in the last 6 months, it just depends on where we're at. I just thank everybody for coming and for listening, and it's been a great opportunity for me to hear about things that I hadn't heretofore heard about, and saw me taking notes. I can't use one of those that quick yet. I've got one, but I'm trying to learn. But the notes are there. I will listen, and I will take action based on what I hear at these sessions. I might keep some of my own opinions. I obviously have a few on the education world, but I'm going to fight for those as long as I can because I believe I'm right until somebody proves I'm wrong. Okay? But thanks, folks. I've enjoyed the heck out of it. And thanks again for Johnston County support throughout the campaign to get elected.
Thank you. I appreciate being here. I look forward, I see a lot of familiar faces, and I look forward to seeing you all again, either tomorrow night or down the road. As always, if there's anything that you think that I can help you with, I mean, that's what we're hired to do, is try to help you solve your problems. If I'm not the guy to help you with it, then I'm going to get you in touch with Senator Rabin or Senator Jackson or JH or whoever it is that we need to get you solution to the problem. It has been a great experience for me these last 2 years to work in the General Assembly with the quality of folks that we have up there. I really, despite his picking, I really do like Brent a lot. And he's a good fella. He keeps me grounded on certain areas and realizing what's going on because of the business that he's in. And I try to do the same thing because I'm a lawyer by profession, and much as that, it's all joking right here, as much as that irritates him, I mean, we do come in handy once in a while. and so, you know, we have a good team. I'm really excited about Senator Rabin being with us and continuing to work with the delegation from Johnston County. It's been a really good experience. We have a lot of great opportunities ahead of us in this state. We really do have our brighter days ahead of us. And I'm really looking forward to getting back to work in Raleigh and seeing what we can do to improve the situation in the state and help us realize those goals. Please call on me if you have a concern, if there's something that's on your mind, something we haven't talked about tonight. I'll have some cards here. I'll be glad to give them out. And I look forward to talking to you all again real soon. Thank you.
Thank you all for being here, and thank you for the opportunity I've had to serve, and I'll continue to do the things we need to do. And we definitely will listen to what you have to input. You people that are concerned about education and teachers and all, stay tuned. I believe we're going to do some things that will make things better. And I'll be focused on teachers because I tell people that as a teacher, if I didn't, I knew what my students were doing, and I think good teachers always do. I was reminded of something I used was that my really brilliant students succeeded in spite of me. It was the ones that were at the low level I really needed to help, which is ones I work on. Thank you.
Well, I want to thank my colleagues for being here, Representative Langdon and Senator Rabin and Senator Newton. And I do pick at Newton a lot, go back and forth. And he knows him being a lawyer irritates me too. So, you know, there's a few of us in the North Carolina Senate, and I'll tell you the story in closing. There's a few of us in the North Carolina Senate, when something is mentioned about a lawyer, there's one particular individual on normally stand there, it happens to be our rules chairman, and say, I'm one of the normal people, not the abnormal. So I consider myself a normal person, not the abnormal. With no offense to our judicial branch back there, you know. But I'm really disappointed. Nobody mentioned voter ID.
We know you're gonna handle it.
That's exactly what we wanted you to hear, and we are going to handle that. There is one other issue I want you to pay close attention to when you hear anything about it. I want you to read up on it. I want you to study about it, and that is our new tax reform that they're talking about coming out of the Senate. Will probably lead the charge on that. But I want you to pay attention to it, and if you've got any questions, do not hesitate to call any of us on this, because I have some good things about it, and there's some bad things about it. And it's not a win-win for everybody, I'll tell you that up front. So you need to look at it, and if you're in business, you need to look at your business and see how it's going to affect it. And if you're a taxpayer, as far as personal income tax, it's going to be done away with. It'll be a sales tax base, which is not all bad. But if you're in business, a little different, that we're having some discussions on now. Folks, I really appreciate y'all coming out on one, that it was a holiday, and two, the weather we know is going to be cold, getting colder, and it means a lot to me that y'all care enough about your community to come out. And so I thank y'all all for coming, and if I have cards as well, and I'll go ahead and tell the story that I always tell folks, you paid for these, so get you one. And they were paid with taxpayer dollars, so they're your cards, and I'm just part of them. So thank y'all for coming, and hope y'all have a safe trip home. Thank you.
It's nice seeing you again. See you at convention. Thank you. Oh yeah, I'll see you again. Great to see you. Thank you.
Nice to see you.
Did you,